Hello, and welcome to the I-90 Bridges West of Alberton project, virtual open house and the live question and answer session. I'm going to go ahead and give it just another minute here while we wait to make sure folks are able to join in that it might be waiting or coming in here. So we'll pause for just a minute here, and then we'll begin the presentation portion. It looks like we can go ahead and get started now. Again, I'd like to welcome you to this presentation and question and answer session for the I-90 Bridges West of Alberton project. During this online session, MDT and the project team are going to provide an overview of the project and talk about the proposed improvements. A live question and answer session will be held immediately following the presentation to answer your questions. I'd like to explain to you how to participate in those question and answer session. If you find the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, you can click on that button and it should pop up a box that allows you to type in and submit questions. You can submit those at any time during the presentation, but we will hold all questions until the end and then answer them after the presentation. The online session is being recorded, and we'll have a copy of this recording, which will include the slides and the audio, and we'll post that to the project website. It should take probably up to about a week in order for it to get posted up there. If you had any friends, neighbors, or coworkers that couldn't attend today's online session, you can invite them to view that presentation and submit comments to us by visiting the project website, and I'll show that project website URL at the end of the presentation as well. Or they can join us tomorrow at the Alberton School cafeteria for an in-person open house. The public is welcome to drop by anytime between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. to view the same displays that you'll see here today and talk to one of the project team members. And at this time, I would like to turn over the microphone to the MDT District Bridge Engineer, Dwayne Wilson. Dwayne?
Thank you, Brandon. So my name is Dwayne Wilson, and I am responsible for managing the pre-construction activities for many bridge replacement and rehabilitation projects in the Missoula District. MDT's mission is to serve the public by providing a transportation system and services that emphasize quality, safety, cost effectiveness, economic vitality, and sensitivity to the environment. MDT maintains a staff with the resources and technical expertise needed to perform the workload for the majority of the state transportation projects. When MDT does not have the resources or technical expertise in-house, MDT hires consultants for specific project work. Consultants are an extension of the MDT staff, capable of providing additional skills, experience, expertise, and quality work without increasing in-house staff. They are managed by the MDT consultant design engineer and work together with the MDT project team and management to deliver the project. So at this time, I'm going to ask each of the team members to unmute and introduce themselves, starting with Jason Sen.
Hi, I'm Jason Sen. I work in the MDT Consultant Design Bureau, and I'm the project manager on this project.
Next is Jim Scholes.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Scholes. I work at Morrison Merrily. I am the project manager from our behalf, and I'm also a bridge engineer.
Next is Phil Forbes.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Phil Forbes. I work with Jim Scholes over at Morrison Merrily, and my primary interest on the project is in the roadway design.
Next is Jason Millar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Millar, and I work for Morrison Merrily. My role on this project is a bridge designer and working with Jim and Phil for structure selection.
Next is Brandon Coates.
Hello again, I'm Brandon Coates, and I am a public involvement manager for RBCI. And I'm working with the project team doing the public involvement and public outreach, along with helping facilitate today's meeting and the in-person meeting tomorrow.
And next is Andy Barsness.
Yes, thanks, Dwayne. My name is Andy Barsness, and along with Brandon Coates, I work in public involvement for the project for RBCI.
So the MDT Bridge Bureau is tasked with keeping Montana's bridges safe, resilient, economic, and reliable. The Bridge Bureau is organized in two sections: the bridge section, bridge management section, and the bridge design section. MDT's bridge management section provides condition inspection, load rating evaluation for over 4,500 public bridges in the state. The bridge management section also evaluates and analyzes overweight permit loads and performs bridge maintenance on state-owned bridges. MDT's bridge design section provides design and engineering management on the bridge replacement, rehabilitation, and preservation projects. The bridge design section also establishes and maintains design criteria and standards, participates in research projects, and promotes design, initiates to improve bridge performance and value. So at this time, I will turn it over to Jason Sim.
Thanks, Dwayne. I'll give you a quick project overview. MDT is improving 3 bridges on the westbound lanes of Interstate 90 west of Alberton and Mineral County. These bridges carry I-90 traffic over the old Highway 10 at Elizabeth Lane, which is 9.5 miles west of Alberton, and the Clark Fork River near Alberton Gorge, approximately 8.5 miles west of Alberton. And finally, the Clark Fork River near the Sear Bridge, approximately 5 miles west of Alberton. These bridges were constructed in 1965 and are routinely inspected by the MDT Bridge Bureau. MDT has performed maintenance and repairs on the bridges, but no major improvements have been made since they were built. MDT is investing in the future of the interstate and has partnered with Morrison Merrily to identify and design the needed improvements. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jim Scholes from Morrison Merrily to tell you more about the project.
Thanks, Jason. I'm going to talk a little bit about the project schedule. This project is in the design development process, which means we are still several years away from construction. The project team began evaluating the bridges in 2020. This included gathering and analyzing data, performing field studies, including site survey, environmental fieldwork, and preliminary geotechnical investigations. The information from the evaluation was carefully considered to develop the preliminary improvements that we are presenting today. The next step is to begin developing the final design plans. The final design phase will also include an opportunity for the public to comment prior to finalizing the design. We anticipate completing the designs in 2025. At that time, the project will be ready for construction. The current schedule suggests that the earliest construction could occur is in 2025. However, construction is dependent on the availability of funding and will be scheduled once the design plans are finalized. Morrison Merrily was tasked with evaluating these 3 structures and developing improvements that are functional, low maintenance, and are appropriate for each location. Some of the things we needed to consider in the design include ensuring the continued safe operation of the bridges, developing cost-effective improvements, and matching the interstate configuration with 2 through lanes. I'm now going to talk about the improvements recommended for each bridge. At the westbound Old Highway 10 Elizabeth Lane Bridge, we studied various replacement and rehabilitation options. Rehabilitation of the structure was chosen to extend the service life of the structure. The expected rehabilitation work includes minor concrete repair and painting of the girders on the 2 steel spans above Elizabeth Lane. The rehabilitation is expected to extend the useful life of the structure more than 25 years. Next slide. The Clark Fork River Bridge site is very challenging and numerous considerations and options were studied. A few of the challenges studied included very difficult access to the river, tough girder erection, challenging foundation and structure removal, and very steep slopes. Bridges studied included steel and concrete superstructures in 3 and 5 span configurations. After considering multiple rehabilitation and replacement options, a new structure was selected as the most appropriate option for this site and structure. The preferred structure is a 3-span steel structure with a much longer main span compared to the existing structure. The foundations will be located upland and outside of the river. The anticipated foundations are drilled shafts at the piers and driven piles at the abutments. Next slide. The Clark Fork River Bridge near Sear site is also very challenging with similar challenges to the previous structure, and the same considerations and options were studied. The bridges studied included steel and concrete bridge superstructures and 4 and 5 span configurations. After considering multiple rehabilitation and replacement options, a new structure was selected as the most appropriate option for this site and structure. The preferred structure is a 4-span steel structure with a longer main span compared to the existing structure. The pier foundations will be located closer to the river banks. Anticipated foundations are drilled shafts at the piers and driven steel piles at the abutments. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Forbes to talk about the preliminary traffic controls.
Thank you, Jim. Work on the I-90 bridges will require use of standard traffic crossovers where all of I-90 traffic will be on the eastbound lanes at reduced speeds around the bridges during construction. Making sure that paint removed from the bridge over Elizabeth Lane is contained may require tenting and possibly a short temporary driveway around the overhead work. Overhead work above Sawmill Gulch Road, such as removing the existing bridge and setting beams for the new bridge, will require intermittent closures to protect drivers below. On the Clark Fork River, we will provide floaters and boaters with advance warning of downstream construction and provide guidance with floating buoys through the sites. Some temporary closures of the river may be prudent. River closures must be approved by the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Next slide. In terms of environmental considerations, as part of any federally funded project, in this case, funding from FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, MDT needs to ensure the project is compliant with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA requires federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of their proposed actions prior to making decisions. Using the NEPA process, agencies evaluate the environmental and related social and economic effects of their proposed actions. Agencies also provide opportunities for public review and comment on those evaluations. These bridges are being reviewed under NEPA, which includes the requirements of a few other important federal acts. For this project, MDT had Morrison Merrily and its subconsultants conduct a site investigation of the bridge sites for biological resources. In consideration of the Endangered Species Act, bull trout, grizzly bear, and lynx were identified as having potential to be impacted by this project. Our project team is already coordinated with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to identify conservation measures to be taken to avoid and or minimize impacts during construction. For example, in-water work will be limited. We'll increase the bridge spans as much as possible to keep piers out of the water, as Jim described earlier. And the contractor will minimize noises transmitted through the water. In regards to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, bald and golden eagles are likely in the area, and surveys will be conducted as construction approaches to determine if active nests are nearby. Avoiding disturbing active nests for all migratory birds is a normal part of MDT's approach to construction projects and activities. Additionally, other areas of concern include providing wildlife crossings of the interstate corridor and accommodating recreational river activities that we talked about on the previous slide. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jason Sen to talk about next steps.
Thanks, Phil. So as we discussed earlier in the presentation, we're currently in the early design phases of the project. And following these public meetings, the project team will review input from the public, analyze additional technical and environmental data, and refine the design improvements, and then begin the process for acquiring any right-of-way that may be needed for construction. The current schedule suggests that the final design plans will be presented to the public sometime in late 2024 or early 2025. And construction on these bridges is dependent on the available funding and will be scheduled once the design plans are finalized. And now I'll turn it back over to Brandon to close out the presentation and let you know how you can stay informed about the project.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for participating in the development of this project. I'd also like to remind you at this time about the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Feel free to pop that up and submit any questions that you may have for the project team or any comments that you wanted to provide. And we will begin going through the Q&A session here shortly. Keeping the public informed throughout the project is a priority for MDT. As Jason mentioned, the public input collected as part of this online open house and the in-person open house will be considered in the final development of the design and the planning for construction. I am the initial contact point on this project. My contact information is on the screen currently. And for any of you that may be joining by phone, my name is Brandon Coates, and my email is Brandon, BRANDON, @rbci.net. And my phone number is 406-465-3350. That information is also located on the project's website, which is included on this slide. MDT is planning to use a variety of methods to continue to communicate with you during construction of the project as well. Some of those methods might include online and in-person meetings, US mail, news media, social media, and then as well as email and text updates and updates to the project website. MDT will provide information and outreach about construction once the project has been funded and is closer to construction. If you have any comments or questions at any time, please feel free to contact me. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and begin the Q&A session and see if Andy, do we have any questions that have come in that we can go ahead and get started with?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. We'll go ahead and get started. We have had some questions come in. Looks like the first question we have is from Jacob, and Jacob asks, why are only westbound structures considered for reconstruction? Dwayne, would you be able to, or excuse me, Jim, would you be able to take that one?
Yes, I'll give it a shot and let Dwayne follow me up if he prefers. The main emphasis for the project was to replace the westbound structures, and that's largely due to their year of construction, the type of construction in that time. So in general, I don't know the exact dates of the construction of eastbound and westbound, but westbound was constructed in the mid-60s with the eastbound following about 10 years after that. So actually the bridge types are, while they look very similar, slightly different. In particular, the westbound structures are two girder structures and have elements in them that wear out. I think is the easiest way I was going to say are fracture critical. And since they were built, they have had some repairs to arrest any cracks that could have occurred. They are currently safe and functional, but they are at the end of their useful life. And so to summarize all of that, the westbound structures are a different vintage to that of the eastbound and are at the end of their useful life. Hopefully I answered your questions, and I'll allow Dwayne to clarify anything that I mentioned that might have been confusing.
The only clarification that I'll add would be the parallel structures, the newer ones were built in the early 80s, around 1981. And so they're currently in fair or good condition. So they have a lot more useful life left in them, and preservation activities will continue to go on in the future. But at this time, we're just going to focus on those bridges built in the mid 60s as part of this project.
Great. Well, thank you both for the information. We had another question from Jacob who asked, are alternative contract models such as CMGC or design build being considered, or just standard design bid build, and why? Jason, would you be able to take that one?
Yeah, I believe this project was looked at for some alternative contracting methods. It didn't really fall under the design build alternative contracting method. However, it may have qualified for CMGC, but unfortunately, MDT right now only has a pilot, a CMGC project approved through the legislature, where we were approved to do 4 pilot projects under that alternative contracting method, and 4 projects had already been selected. So we didn't have the availability to do this one. We are going to the legislature this session to try to make that a permanent alternative delivery method. And then maybe we could look at doing projects like this in the future with that CMGC process.
Great, thanks, Jason. We had another question coming in from Jason who said, for the Elizabeth Lane Bridge, what will be the construction impacts on the residences that live directly west or east of the bridge? Phil, would you be able to take that?
I will. Thank you. Construction impacts the I-90 bridge over Elizabeth Lane and Old Highway 10, again, is just preliminarily scheduled for rehabilitation. So we don't anticipate any changes to either Old Highway 10 or Elizabeth Lane. Although again, to remove the paint on the structure, we probably will have some tenting that will be the full extent of Elizabeth Lane. And right at this moment, we anticipate having a short little detour around one of the bridge piers down there. Trying to anticipate other parts of your question, clearly there will be some of the bridge activities that will involve noise, like pile driving, and the department normally restricts the hours of operation when those kinds of activities are underway. And then lastly, I think in terms of the traffic crossovers and access to exit 65, just the way things are laying out here, it looks like traffic, at least preliminarily, will all be on the eastbound lanes through exit 65, but just in some preliminary work, we believe we'll be able to provide a temporary off-ramp and on-ramp so that people will still have access to the area roadways at exit 65. So hopefully I've covered what was anticipated for the impacts during construction.
Great, thank you, Phil. We have another question in from Becky, and Becky asks, will there be any changes to the current curvature of the highway or changes in speed limit in this area as part of this project? Phil, would you also be able to take that one?
Sure. Becky, we are going to put the bridges back in at their current alignment, which is both horizontal alignment, which is the curvature, and the vertical alignments. So we don't see any change in speed limits associated with the project.
Great. Thanks again, Phil. Looks like we had another few questions come in from Jason, and Jason asks, when the Crystal Springs exit was built, we lost all of our water from a spigot that accessed the well. What will be the impact on our water and existing wells? Would anybody be comfortable with that one?
This is Phil, I guess, primarily like to hear more about what happened and where the wells are located. I might turn to Jim. I guess I would just ask for more information so that we can evaluate what may have happened in the past.
And this is Jim. I'm with Phil. I guess we aren't anticipating doing a lot of work at that location and need more information on your wells to ensure we don't impact them.
All right. Well, thank you for the information. And Jason had a follow-up question here. What will you do to ensure debris and trash will not be falling from the bridge during construction for floaters below? In the past, workers have just thrown their trash off the bridge directly into the river, specifically the Alberton Gorge. Let's see. Dwayne or Phil, would you be able to answer that?
Yeah, I'll just provide some comments. Yeah, it's something that during construction, the construction manager will have to definitely make the construction team aware of those issues and just bring that to their attention.
Great, thanks, Dwayne. And yep, we appreciate the comment, Jason. We have another question coming in from Mike. Mike says, do you know what the timeline for the Old Sear Bridge project is, and if this will be occurring during the same time period? Dwayne, could you take that?
Sure. Currently, our MDT bridge team for the Missoula district is doing the plans, specials, and estimates for that project. The current schedule is for it to go to letting in January. So we anticipate that there'll be construction starting in the late spring, summer of 2023.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dwayne. Okay, and we'll give just a few more minutes here. Looks like we don't have any more questions at the moment, but again, like Brandon mentioned, if you hit that little Q&A button at the bottom, that will pull up a screen where you can type your question in and submit it to us. So we'll give just a minute or two here to make sure anybody that would like to ask a question has a chance to do so. Again, just hit that little Q&A button and we'll wait for just a moment.
I'd also like to let everybody know too that if you have a question that you think of later, feel free to email that to me and we can get those questions answered. Or if there's more information you can provide, especially on something like the well, or if you want to speak to somebody, we can get in touch with you and get more information about that and be able to answer your question in that way. So my email is brandon@rbci.net.
Great, thanks, Brandon. Well, it looks like we haven't had any more questions or comments come in yet. But again, like Brandon said, if you do have questions down the road that you think of, feel free to reach out using that contact information anytime, and we'll be happy to help you out. And otherwise, thank you for participating in the Q&A today, and I'll turn it back over to Brandon.
Thanks, Andy. Looks like we finished a little bit early here, so seeing no other questions come in, we will go ahead and end today's presentation. Again, we will be posting the slides and the audio, includes the questions and answers to the project website, and that is at mdt.mt.gov/pub-involve/I-90 Alberton. Thank you and have a great day.